My name is Rachel Dixon. I'm a massage therapist and postural alignment therapist on Nantucket Island. I've been doing massage for about 20 years, and over the years, I found that people needed to do exercises and to really address the chronic pain that they had. Chronic pain had been what I specialized in with massage. So I work on people for relaxation too. Lately, with everyone's stress amping up, ironically, they are coming in for me more for stress relief than they are for chronic pain. But most people who have chronic stress also have chronic pain. So just as a little bit of a concern, if all of this is for informational purposes only. If for some reason these are not comfortable for you, stop. Be sure to talk to your doctor if you have any concerns about whether these are helpful for you. But most of what we're going to go over today are various different levels of what would be helpful for most people. Different people will have different levels of where they should start. And I realize I am missing one thing. I'll get that in a second. Okay, so we're going to be talking about rotations and movement for life. So a lot of people come to me with neck pain, and the neck pain has increased a lot with device use that they've had. So when someone comes in and they said, my main complaint is my neck. My neck has been bothering me. And I often see this hitting people somewhere between 40 and 55 typically. And typically they'll have spent a lot of time on the computer. But either way, when someone comes in and they say, my neck is in pain, I'm going to ask them to do 3 different tests. And these tests are going to tell me where I think we have to address their issue. So the 3 tests are, I ask them to look at their device, okay? So I have them pick up their phone because everyone has their phone with them. And I look to see if they look down like this, okay? So this is similar to what we worked on the pain in the neck video that we did. So if they tend to have an issue where they are, instead of using their eyes to look down, they're using their head to look down, that is the first test, okay? Because then I know they're using their neck instead of using their eyes. The second test was, I tell them to look over there, which is over their shoulders. And I am looking to see if they turn their head like this, which is pure range of motion of the neck, right? Or if they're going to use their body as a unit, which is going to be to use their whole body to look this way. And this is the test that we're going to be addressing today. This would be an individual movement versus a move the body as a unit, okay? And where this is problematic is our bodies are supposed to be worked as a unit, and it's how our brain is attached to the movement that we use. So that's really what we're going to be addressing today. And then the third thing is I look at how much people are nodding their head when they're talking to me. And this is super common. As people have put masks on and people can't connect as well, or they feel like their words aren't connecting as well, I'm finding that more people are looking to connect with people by nodding their heads. Because nodding their heads, there's going to be a real rapport with someone. It's like, I'm looking at you, I'm hearing you, which is wonderful. But almost everyone who has pain in the neck is a neck nodder, and our necks aren't really meant to nod that often. And so if you have pain in the neck and you're a neck nodder, you may want to find another way to connect with someone, find rapport with someone. But today we're going to work on that, moving our body as a unit in rotational patterns. So how is this going to help you? How is it going to show up in life? It usually starts with younger people. The reason why you would want to address it is people often have pain. They have pain in the neck, hence why I look at it when people come in with pain in the neck. But it's going to show up in lots of other ways. So very typical is at some point, you're going to have trouble driving. And that's because it's going to be hard to look around and to see to your side or to see behind you. So as you age and you lose your mobility, it's going to show up as unsafe driving behavior or unsafe ability to drive or discomfort. It hurts my neck to look that way. It's also going to show up in life, or you're going to have issues in life with this in multiple different ways. It's going to show up in driving. It's going to show up in sitting at a desk. So a lot of people, right, you have a dominant hand. So if I'm sitting at a desk, I am most likely not going to be sitting facing forward with everything facing forward. I'm going to be writing, right? So I'm going to be twisting. I'm right-handed, so I'm going to twist to the left, and I'm going to spend all day long twisted to the left. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time equally twisted to the right because I'm not left-handed. If you are at a computer desk and you are doing work on the computer, it's very common when you're typing, you're right here. But it's really common to have a leg, one leg, crossed over the other. It's really common sometimes when people have, say they're always processing checks. They're always lifting from the check pile to this, or they're always having the calculator on one side. So people at desks, depending on how their desks are set up, they're going to have a particular pattern of movement that is a rotation that you repeat multiple times in one direction, not another. Same thing could be for a gardener. You have a dominant hand. So you're going to lean over and you're going to hold with one hand and you're going to dominantly trim with the other. Or a carpenter is going to dominantly hold perhaps with the left hand and hammer with the right. Okay. Babies have the same thing. I'm trying to bring all ages into this. Babies, if you are bottle fed, okay, babies are going to be held oftentimes in one side, one hand, and the bottle is going to be on the other, okay? Then very rarely do parents switch it around where the baby's in the other hand and you're holding the bottle with the non-dominant side, okay? This is training the baby, or this is not training the baby's eyes, ideally, because the outside eye is going to develop much better than the inside eye. Same thing with holding a baby, okay? If you're holding a baby, parents tend to have a dominant hip that they have. So that outside eye is going to develop more and the baby's going to wiggle around on their hip, but rarely is it easy for the parents to switch hips and have 50% on the other side. So these rotational dominance shows up a lot in our life. And what we're going to do today is talk a little bit about how to improve them. So I'm going to quickly grab a chair because that was the thing I had forgotten. I'll be right back. I apologize for that. So how are we supposed to ideally rotate? So when we're ideally supposed to rotate, we're supposed to work as a unit. So the unit is that our hips rotate, and then our shoulders rotate, and then our head rotates, and we turn around, okay? And I just forgot the first thing. The first thing we do is our eyes always start the movement. So we think about, we're going to move in that direction. We have our eyes start the movement, and then we're going to move together as a unit. And when you see, if I was just going to look over that way, and I'm going to see how far I can go, this is as far as I could go from either side. Now, if I'm going to make the whole movement, you can see I'm actually not having to move my my neck very far, and yet I go a lot further because I'm working my body as a unit. Okay, so how do we do this? We first turn our hips, turn our shoulders, and follow through with our neck, and this is after we initiated the movement with our eyes. All right, so there are muscles that work together as a unit. So if I am just moving my neck like this, okay? There's going to still be more than one muscle that's working, but we're really looking at the individual muscles. When I work my body with a unit, you're working a lot of times one or two main muscles, but then we're working these synergistic muscles. We're working muscles that work together as a team to accomplish a particular movement. And it also is going to train your nervous system. The nervous system motor skills are developed by babies as they develop their motor skills. Okay, so pressing up on their belly, rocking, crawling, and rolling over are patterns that the baby earns. Okay. And these movements actually train the brain. This is the child, the human, developing the nervous system. At the same time, they're developing the curves in their spine as well. Babies are born with a very soft curve, and then they develop the curves in their body as they develop these movements. And it also affects the brains in other ways. For example, crawling and reading are connected. If you don't do the motor movements of training the brain with crawling, you will have issues with reading. And while most adults have perfected movements as babies, over time and injuries, we lose our ideal movement. But by practicing these movements, we can retrain our brain and our nervous system. And it's like when we have a computer and our computer's a little bit junked up and we turn it off and we turn it back on and it reboots the computer system. By going back and working on some of these basic movements that we did when we were infants, we can help reboot our nervous system as an adult. So this is mostly going to be showing up as better movement, fewer injuries, and typically feeling better. Okay, so how do rolling patterns and thoracic rotation show up as adults? Because really, our whole body is going to work as a movement, but we're mostly talking about our hips, our thoracic area, and then our neck on top of it, okay? And if you're standing, you're going to have your hips too, but that's really sort of in at the waist. So turning your neck, over using your neck, driving, sitting at desks with the dominant hand, repetitive movements like me doing massage. I am far more dominant moving with my right hand, pressing to the left. If I sit here and turn towards the right, I'm not nearly as powerful. Okay. Very often showed up in people walking as well. You can see issues showing up when people are walking with their upper body. And I'm going to talk about that when we break down the patterns. But how do we address it? First of all, it's helpful to break down the movement into the individual muscles and kind of break it up into pieces, perfect the pieces, and then put it together as a body. So then when we're putting it together as a body, we're going to be training the nervous system with rolling patterns, and then we need to apply it to life. So in breaking down the movement, there is a really easy exercise called sitting chair twists. It's an Egoscue exercise. I should go back though. Much of my class was designed in part in Katie Bowman's Dynamic Aging book. Okay. In fact, in the Dynamic Aging book, there are some great tests where if you have a particular issue with driving, and it's one particular issue, she breaks down the exercises that are really excellent. So in spite of much of the practical advice is in this class right here, it still might be beneficial to have this book and to be able to work through it. But sitting chair twist. So this is going to be a great way to, when you sit at a desk anyway, if you're already sitting at a desk, this is a great exercise to do. It's also a breakdown movement because you're going to find it a lot easier to do it in a chair or finding the time to do it. We sit in chairs all the time. So why not spend a minute or two doing this exercise when we're already sitting in chairs? And also, if you have trouble getting down to the ground and getting back up again, it is very easy to do it in a chair. And I might as well say right now, even though I'm going to get on the ground to work on these rolling patterns, you don't have to. These are ones that work really well on a bed as well, which is more a higher level. Okay, you need to have the space to roll over, but bed usually has that. But getting down to the ground isn't always necessary. Beds are softer, and that makes it a little tiny bit trickier. Okay. But when we spend a lot of time at a desk, we tend to have a preference of sides. Example, I showed you as we have, a dominant hand, we have a dominant writing hand, we reach in particular areas, and maybe we have a preference of shifting one leg over, which starts a rotation and limits our ability to be forward when we have that leg over it, okay? And in gait, right here, I say, in gait, your thoracic area should equally rotate to both sides. And when people don't do this, you can see it. Now, you can see it in gait as one arm moving more forward than the other, and with the other being further back, okay? We should have equal movement on both sides, so improving this can decrease repetitive injuries. For gait, a marching movement accentuating the arms will help. So I'm going to show you the sitting chair twist, then I'm going to show you how you can see it in gait. And then I'm going to challenge you guys to, when you're driving, to watch the people on the bike path and notice if you're seeing some of these thoracic rotations in people, because once you start to see it, you're not going to not see it. Okay, so sitting chair twist. This is a thoracic movement. It's the very easy one to do. I'm going to do it this way, and then I'm going to do it on the side. It's very easy to do because we already sit all the time. And if you have trouble getting down to the ground, or you don't find the time to get all the way down to the ground or onto a bed to practice the other, it's a great start. So we're going to always start by moving our eyes first. Okay, so I'm starting to think about my eyes, but I'm going to twist at the hip. I'm going to twist here, and I'm going to look as far as I can do this way. And then if you want to increase it, you can almost put your hand to the outside, and you can kind of stretch it a little bit. So I'm using my own muscles to do all the movement, and then I'm going to place my hands here, and I'm going to use this outside hand to just push me a little bit further, and that's going to add a little bit of a stretch, and you can just hold it for 30 seconds, a minute, but you're almost better off holding it for like 10 seconds, and then we're going to come the other way, okay? So now I'm going to think about starting with my eyes. I'm going to turn my hip area, then I'm going to turn my thoracic area, then I'm going to let my neck, then I'm going to hold my hand to the outside, and this actually feels so good. I'm going to add a little bit of a stretch into that. Again, I'm going to start with my eyes. I'm going to turn my body, my shoulders, my neck, add a little bit of an extra stretch into it. And then my eyes, my hips, my thoracic area, and add a little bit of a stretch into it. So this is really great, okay? If you are sitting at the desk and you are right-handed and you're going to be probably spending more time leaning over to the left, you can just think about, you know what? Every 30 minutes, I'm going to take a minute and I'm just going to stretch to the other direction. And then it doesn't hurt to, stretch back. And then maybe you try it one more time. And this is going to be really great. Now, when you're driving, how might this show up? You're not going to take this hand and press it here. But the more that you get used to it, it is going to be easier to look over your shoulder when you're driving than you had before. Any questions on this before we go over some gait things? All right, so if we don't have gait things, let me move this chair out of the way. So I'm going to lift this up a little bit because I want you guys to see my upper body, not my lower body. Okay, so when you're having gait, there is an element where your arms are going to move like this, okay? So my legs are moving too, so it's going to look like this. It's going to look some people move their arms more, or some people move their arms less, but how your arms are moving are tied in with your thoracic rotation. And where people often make a mistake is they often look like this. Okay, this is an issue. It's showing up in the length of their legs, but you'll see it. It's about how much their upper body is, really it's their spine rotating over their pelvis. But you will often see on people, okay, you will often see an element where it looks like this. And it might be that they're going like this. And it might show as like more like this. But, you know, once you have seen that, you're not going to unsee that, okay? How can you work on it? So that's indicating there is an element, if you just look at gait, that they're probably not extending through one hip, but you can practice it by really accentuating the upper body. So even though you can practice rotating, if they're having your right arm moving forward, okay, they have trouble with that left thoracic and turning to the right, okay? So doing the chair exercises and getting the brain primed to be able to rotate towards the right would be very helpful before they go into their walk. The second thing they can do is accentuate their arms a little bit in a marching pattern. Now, marching pattern is similar to a crawling pattern, which is not really what we're working today, but another one of those repetitive baby movements that really help our body in other ways, okay? But you can accentuate. So if I have my right hand moving forward and my left hand only comes up, and then my right hand comes forward and my left comes up, I can really look to make sure that I am equalizing both shoulders and sort of focus on that when you're going for that walk. So very, very helpful. Lots of people come in with shoulder issues that sometimes work up to the neck with that issue. But I thought I would bring it up because it's a big issue that starts with the thoracic and then goes into the shoulders. Now, any questions on that before I get into full-on rolling patterns? All right, let me just take a sip. Rolling patterns. Two people in particular, more than two, multiple people have worked on how these baby movements make a very big difference in older adults. And I mean older than a baby, anyone, little kids too. So rolling patterns show us where we're having issues with the synergistic movement or moving as a unit and teach our brain how to do the movement. So this is both a test to see where are we having specific issues. And then it is an exercise to be able to retrain that area, okay? With this, I want to be very clear that you can break down the movements more to make it more accessible to you, and that you can use props to get you halfway there so that you can improve the muscles and the synergistic pattern of working together so that you can then reduce the props to be able to accomplish the whole thing without using the props. So using props is absolutely fine if you have trouble to do this. You can also, if you have trouble getting down to the ground, do these on, say, a wider bed. Like, so a very small massage table is a little bit hard to flip over exactly under if you're in bed, and you can flip over like this. It makes it a little bit easier, okay? So you can determine where your issues are. We look at the quadrants. So in the perfect world of twisting, we're going to use both our front right and left, and then our back shoulder right and left, and then our lower body right and left, front and back. So that really makes 8 different ways that we roll. Most people have an easier time with their legs than their shoulders. And if you have a real shoulder injury, this may not be possible for you, okay? So this is totally acceptable to maybe work on the lower body if you have pain with this, or you have real trouble getting certain movements, it's totally acceptable to work on what is easy for you and finding a different way to work on the rotational patterns, i.e. sitting in a chair for, say, the upper body ones, which are shoulders. You will see my hardest ones are the back shoulders. I have it very easy working on the lower leg. I have a harder time working on the top. The other way is there's ways of cheating. And if you need to cheat to get started, that's fine. But in the ideal world, we would break it down to just the different parts. Now, to cheat, if I'm having trouble getting over using my shoulders, okay, using the shoulder, is I might push my left leg into the ground to lift me up so I can make the rotation. But then I'm not really just using that one quadrant to roll myself over. So this is where it's a cheat. And then ideally it would say, my shoulder isn't quite strong enough, or putting the muscles together as a unit to be able to make the movement. But you can certainly work with it. The links that I gave you were for original strength. So Gray Cook was the PT that really started us using functional movement systems. In fact, he created the FMS, functional movement systems, and SFMA, which is more for PT people. But other people have really adopted quite a few elements of this. So Original Strength is a company that has very simple, easy ways of breaking down these baby patterns, and they're not quite as rule-oriented as Gray Cook was. So I do like Original Strength in that way. It's fun to make it playful. You know, it shouldn't have to be really hard. And Gray Cook works with a lot of athletes, which is fine, but most of you aren't really athletes. You're athletes in life. You want to be comfortable in life. So I feel like being a little bit playful with these movements is more important than being like extremely tactical about certain other things. Okay, so we have the 4 quadrants in your sheet that you probably got. I also have links to different ways of doing the rolling patterns, okay? And today when I talk about cheating, this is more about how Gray Cook would show up stuff, but Gray Cook is also looking at where are you having issues with this? So if you're having issues with certain ways of rolling, this is how you might work on it. So that's the difference between the two. Okay, so let's go over some of the rolling patterns and then see if you have questions. So first I'm going to go over rolling patterns. Then I'm going to go over using props for rolling patterns. And I'm going to use a tool to, so I have 2 different tools. One's a foam roller and one is a little ball that you might stimulate the area that you're having trouble using for the rolling patterns. That's going to help your brain connect to that area better to see if you can create the movement together better. So let me just grab another sip of water. I'm going to try going in 2 different directions. Let me first go this way. All right, so actually I'll go this way and then I'm going to turn and go the other way. So with the rolling patterns, okay, I'm going to start with the lower leg. I'm going to come over to the left side and I'm going to use my left leg. So I'm going to lift up this leg, okay, and now I'm going to use this guy to roll myself over, and I'm going to try not to drive in with my right heel, because I could make it really easy by driving in with my right heel and pushing myself over. But what I really want to use is this guy. So I'm going to lift here. I'm going to put my arms up just to get them out of the way so I don't have to roll over my arm, okay? So now I'm going to come here and I'm just going to let myself flip over. Now that's using my left front. Now if I'm going to go the other direction, I'm going to bend this leg because I'm still going to use my left. I put my arms up ahead to get them out of the way so I don't have to roll over my arms, okay? I'm going to lift my knee up. This is going to engage into my glute. And now I'm going to drive that leg over and allow the rest of my body to flop. Now, if I look the other way, okay, I'm going to get my arms out of the way. I'm going to lift my right, and I'm just going to draw this over and let myself up. And then I'm going to engage into the right, engage that glute, and draw over this way. Upper body is harder. I've been doing okay with it. We'll see how I do this morning, okay? It really helps. Can you guys see my head okay? Hopefully.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. All right. To get over for the other, okay, you have to drive with your eyes and you have to lift your head up. So you have to lift your head up. I have to look at where I'm going in that direction. And this arm has got to be out of the way because you're probably not going to get over it if that's at your side, okay? So now I'm going to lift up, I'm going to look. I'm going to come right here, and then I'm going to look to engage this area. These muscles are going to get me over, okay? So I'm going to lift, I'm going to engage, I'm going to engage, I'm going to pull, and then I'm going to fall over, okay? So that's the front. What gets harder is turning around for the back, and I'm kind of close to the wall here, but you do the same thing. I'm going to lift my head up. I'm going to look in the direction that I'm going. Now I'm going to be looking like towards my wall, okay? I'm going to lift this up. I'm going to engage those guys. I'm going to look where I'm going, and then I'm going to reach to get myself over. So let's try it with this one. I'm going to get this arm out of the way. I'm going to look, I'm going to lift, I'm going to reach, and I'm engaging into here to try to get myself over. Now to go the other way, I'm going to lift my head up, I'm going to look, I'm going to engage into this, and I'm wanting to push in with that knee, but in the perfect world, I wouldn't do that, and I would get over. So that is a demonstration of the 4 quadrants of rolling patterns. Now, what would it mean if you have trouble with one? As you could see, I had a little bit of a preference between legs, okay? And that's just because I have a dominant side, but practicing that regularly is quite helpful. Arms are a different thing. I spend hours pushing. It is really harder for me to flip and turn this way using these back muscles that are a different rotational pattern than I do all day. The more that I do it, the easier it's going to be. And original strength has really broken it down into some fun, easy ways to be able to work on things. When you think about just training the nervous system, just playing with the rolling patterns, even if you're cheating or doing other things, is extremely helpful. If someone comes in and you say, you know, I'm an athlete and I'm having a particular issue on a particular movement and a particular exercise, this is where really breaking down and seeing where their issues are is helpful. So this is why like Greg Cook gets very, very specific with people. And yet if you're really looking for overall life help, original strength is probably a little less, you know, rule oriented than the other. Ways that you can stimulate the area, and then I'm going to show you ways that you can use tools to cheat. So if I had trouble getting in on my backside, okay, so it's my upper quadrant, I'm on my stomach trying to engage into this area, and I'm just having trouble engaging the correct muscles to get myself over, okay, I'm going to use a stimulating tool, and I'm going to use it lightly, and I'm going to use it fast, and I'm going to use it for 10 seconds, okay? So I might use a little bumpy ball, okay? Now, granted, I could maybe go like this, or I could go up against a wall where it was against the wall, and I'm going to use it a bumpy surface, okay? I'm going to use it for like 10 seconds. I'm going to use it light and fast, and that is really going to help my proprioceptive nerves feel that area better, make that connection better to the area, so that when I go to make the rolling patterns, my brain's going to get into the right muscles faster. This is probably not practical. This could be practical for here, or maybe for your leg. It's not really going to be practical for back there. So this is like a grid foam roller. It's not actually super hard. It's a little bit hard, but it's got these little bumps on it, which is textured, right? So now maybe what I'll do is I'm not going to put a lot of my weight on it, but I'm going to really quick, kind of lightly wake up this area for like 10 seconds. I'm going to wake up this area, and then I'm going to go try the movement again, and I'm going to see if I can do the movement more easily. Ways that you can get yourself halfway there. So if I'm having trouble and I want to use a prop to, if I'm having trouble rolling over and I want to use a prop to get myself halfway there, so my brain can feel the movement pattern. These are some different ways that you can use props. So you could use a pillow, you could use, this is like a soft half foam roller. A full foam roller, I did bring them, but they're a little trickier because they tend to roll away, okay? So say I can't get myself over using this hand right here. I can come right here on my half foam roller. I'm gonna prop up my hip, and I'm gonna prop up that shoulder, okay? And I'm gonna get this arm still out of the way, and you can see I'm kind of halfway there. So now I'm halfway there. I'm going to lift my head up and I'm going to go. And now I can really feel that movement. And I'm going to help train my brain in how to do this movement halfway here so I feel what it's like. And then I try taking my prop out of the way, engaging those muscles, and I have an easier time accomplishing the movement that I was looking to have because I used a prop to help me get halfway there. Any questions on this before we go into the driving section? Okay, those are movement patterns, lots of great links, and you guys can always ask me questions. Driving. So issues with driving show up because of stiffness or lack of stability causing stiffness. And this is really going to be using the mobility of our upper body and the synergistic muscle patterns, but there are also proprioceptive nerves like in the bottom of the feet and the hand that I'm not really addressing today. So that is another thing. That's how quickly you can respond to stuff. But we're going to be going over rotations, like limited mobility and rotations, and stiffness that you might have. So you feel stiff and you think it's just strength, but sometimes it's that your body doesn't feel safe to make a movement, so it's putting the brakes on. We want your body to feel safe turning around, safe doing these things so that it allows you to go there. So sitting chair twist is one of the exercises. This is probably one of the best. Now, we did this at the beginning. And this is an element where we're practicing first our eyes, not necessarily our head, our eyes. Then we're going to use our hip, our upper body, and our head, and then add a little extra stretch into it with this hand. This feels actually so good. And then we're going to start with our eyes, then move our hips, shoulders, and get in here, okay? And that is going to be one of the best, because as you go to look over your shoulder, this is what's going to help you. Instead of just looking over a shoulder like this and look, I can look to my side max. Now, as I go like this, I can see all the way behind me, okay? And you might find that one is easy, the other one is hard. Work on both sides, but really focus on the one that is hard for you to work on. Upper spinal floor twist. Oops. Okay, so upper spinal floor twist is an Egoscue one, but Katie has a slightly different version of it. So this is where if we were driving and you kind of wanted to put your arm up and look over your shoulders, this is where this one would play in. It's also really working on a twist of the upper body with the hips in the opposite direction. So the Egoscue way of doing it, which is a little bit more rule oriented, right? Then I'm going to show you the Katie's, is we're going to have your legs sort of in a chair position. I'm going to stabilize with my muscles here. I'm not really allowing this to stretch, okay? My hands are going to be at my side, and now I'm going to spread my arms this way, and I'm going to be stabilizing at the hip. Okay, I'm not sliding this way. I'm stabilizing at the hip, and I'm asking my back to rotate and my pecs to sort of stretch, and then I'm looking in that direction. So I'm really working opposites here. Now, what it looks like in the other way is like this. And sometimes you have to have a pillow under this arm. For me, I'm fine coming right here. I can even hold my hands right here. I'm going to look towards my right hand right here, and I'm now stretching. My upper body is stretching, and I'm opening up right here. And I'm going to close it back up. One way that Katie talks about having an accommodation for this, right, is to have, like, I don't know if you can see, I'm going to have a pillow right here. So let me try this right here. So she has that your arms are here at the side, and I'm going to just rotate my hips. So her movement is a little bit different, but she's going to have this leg straight, which was not how they had in Egoscue. And I'm going to take this leg, and I'm going to bring it over, and I'm just going to rest it on this guy. Oh, this actually feels really good. So as I'm laying here, my pecs are opened up. I do still have a little bit of a stretch in my back, okay? My hip is stretching, and it's actually stretching opposite of this other leg. So this hip is in flexion, and this leg is neutral. I'm not really extended, but it's neutral. And I'm resting on this. If I didn't have this guy, I wouldn't really make it, right? But it feels really good to rest this leg here, and I've opened up my body. And then I'm going to bring this here. I will bring this guy here. Now I'm going to straighten this leg. I'm going to have these arms here. I'm going to bring this guy over right here. Now this one, ironically, I'm feeling tighter in. So I might hold this a little bit and play with it a little bit and think about what that means for me today, movement-wise. And then come back. All right, any questions on the Katie's and the upper spinal floor twists and sitting twists? Okay, so next we're going to go over ankle mobility test. Ankle mobility is important when you're driving for how well you're able to push down the pedal and not. It actually is important in many areas in life, and it's good to become aware of how mobile your ankles are and are they equal left to right, okay? Because if your ankle isn't mobile enough, you will have knee issues, okay? So, I'm going to make sure you guys can see me up against this wall. So really what I'm going to look at, right, is I'm going to be looking at, can I keep my heel at the ground, and how far can my knee move forward, okay? So now I'm looking to see how much my ankle can stretch without my heel having to come up from the ground, okay? So now I'm going to get down on the ground, okay? I'm going to be in a lunge position, okay? I'm going to be testing this one, okay? This is where I am straight up against the wall. Now I'm going to put myself about 4 inches back, or about half a width of your foot, okay? And you can hold on to something. I can hold on to this. You can hold on to something else. And you're just going to keep your heels on the ground, and you're going to shift forward, and you're going to see, can you reach the wall, okay? If you couldn't reach the wall, it would be good to know, like, how many inches apart can I do to reach it, okay? Or, well, whole foot length. So then you see what one ankle is like. Then we can go on the other and compare it. And then you can compare left to right. If someone came in with me with a knee issue, I would look to see if their ankle mobility was a problem. Now I did see something in the chat, so let me see what it said. Oh, okay. Yes. So knee issues tend to be the scapegoat of an ankle issue or a hip issue. Okay, this is Gray Cook's joint by joint mobility. Certain joints are meant to be mobile, certain joints are meant to be stable. Ankle is meant to be mobile, knee is meant to be stable. If the ankle isn't as mobile as it ought to be, the knee is going to have to become mobile, and it's not meant to become mobile, so it'll often get injured. Hips are meant to be mobile, but it does require a certain amount of stability in the hip, meaning the muscles should be pretty strong. In general, we sit a lot and our hips aren't really strong enough. So if you were to put money on the issue and someone came in with a knee issue, I'm going to say that probably their ankle isn't as mobile as they ought to be, or their hip isn't as stable as they ought to be. And this is a great way to test to see if the issue is in the ankle. Okay, it could be in both. Hardly anyone has a really strong, stable hip in today's world, even when you work on exercises. But that often is where the issue is. Okay, so that was the ankle mobility test. That is going to show you like how well you can, press down on that pedal. Humeral arm twist. This is an element in with driving, okay? There was an Egoscue exercise for this. I had trouble finding what it was even called, so I'm just going to show you what it looks like. Essentially, we have our arms and our lower hand can rotate like this, okay? But what we're actually going to be looking at is have the movement come from where it comes up into the shoulder. So I'm not really looking to just twist the hand. I'm going to look to have it almost be a windshield wiper where all the movement, this is locking, okay? And all the movement's coming from how my humerus is moving in my joint, okay? Couple ways that you can do this. Katie shows in her thing, let's see if you can see it. Okay, let me go like this, okay? So Katie shows where she has her hands stretched out like this. This is also a really great stretch for the hands because our hands tend to be a little bit more flexed typically than neutral or extended. But this is also a little bit more work on our wrists. So this is where I'll show you a couple different ways that you could do it. So Katie talked about how flexible your hands are. We're going to do that in a minute. And it's almost hard to do this with all your weight in it. So I'm shifting my weight a little bit back. So I have some weight in my hands, but not all my weight in my hands. So now I'm going to try to have the movement come right here. And I'm going to see how this movement is. And see, I was a little limited in that right, and see how I wanted to bend my elbow. So that's showing me where I'm cheating to accomplish the movement, okay? Now, I could do it up against a wall also, and this might be easier. So I'm going to come up against a wall. I'm going to align my shoulders. I have my hands right here. And now I'm going to try, and this is a little bit easier. I'm going to keep that elbow. And see, I can tell that my issue on the right is coming because I have probably a little more junk in here on my wrist. And I'm feeling it. So this is sort of getting, it's like a windshield wiper to be able to see what, our humeral arm twist. And then Katie talked about stretching the hands. So even placing your hands on the ground, like I had, placing it, now you don't necessarily have to put your weight on it, right? But placing your hands on a table and just playing with, can your hands spread out and place apart? Do I have issue more with my thumbs? Do I have contractures in my fingers where the issue is? You can add a little bit more of a stretch. You don't want to put a lot of weight into it, but you could play a little bit by just adding a little bit of a stretch into this. Okay, so that's one way that you could stretch it, or you could have your hands here and you could just see about flexibility with your hands. Now I am extending my hands by doing this. I probably don't need to bring my hands more into flexion because we tend to do a good job with this, but some people do have grip strength issues, and they might have trouble gripping the wheel. So you could work with little weights, not weights, little like squishy balls to be able to improve, just having overall grip strength. And then, alignment up into the shoulder is very helpful with grip strength as well. Katie uses elbow touch. Elbow touch is tricky for me because of how I use my body so much, but elbow touch is in front of you, your elbows touching here, your hands touching here, okay? And then opening this up. So actually, Barbara, we're gonna keep our elbows together. So our elbows are together. It's hard for me to tell if you're doing this, but we're keeping our elbows touching, and we're gonna open up this right here, yeah. And as much as possible, it's gonna be straight. So it's not just about our hands coming like this, it's about the whole thing moving like this. It's actually not that easy. For myself, this is like, I'm working hard to be able to get right here, okay? So in Katie Bowman's book, there was a specific graph of movement test. The physician says there are particular tests that you can go over. It was an actual one. The American Geriatric Society in 2016, at least, was the one used to write the book that I have. And it has the movement test, which would be, say, neck rotation. The physician says, look over your shoulder like you're backing up and parking. Now do the same thing for the other side. So that was what the test was. The test was, can you look over your shoulder like you're backing up and parking, and being able to do it on both sides. Katie had different exercises. If you had trouble with that, okay, if you had trouble with that, then the different exercises that she had in her book that would help address your specific issue. Well, it's good to work on all of these things. If you're having issues in a certain area, that is where you would want to work. And if you had just a fractured humerus, that would be very hard to do, and I wouldn't necessarily recommend that, but until it's healed. And then I would work with sort of PT with certain levels of being able to get that. I broke my left radius when I was 14. That is like many years ago now, and I still have more issues with rotation. It was a minor fracture. It wasn't even a bad fracture. But I still have some different discomfort at times into the hand that I had broken at one time. But it is very good to be able to work the body in different ways, in different units. I would especially look to have your body heal. I would have your body heal with range of motion, but not necessarily weighted. And then if it's safe to do so, add some weight into it. So up here is movement not weighted, right? And then if you were on the ground, okay, now I've got my body weight into it, okay? So very, very different. Very common, one of the most important areas to heal with range of motion is your foot, because we will spend the rest of our life on our foot, okay? We have lots of ligaments and tendons, and if we heal and we've been in a boot and we've never moved our body, now using a boot when you're walking can be helpful, but if we heal and our foot is up like this, and then we go, okay, now we need to add movement, and I'm asking my foot to flex and extend, a lot of times stuff gets stuck here, and then we have to kind of rip things up to get them moving again. And it's really better to be able to have mobility into the area, but not weight it as we're healing. And then to add weight into it as it goes.